Hey, what's up, everybody? Today we are talking about the best lenses for just about any sport you can imagine. Hey guys, my name is Jack Beasley. I'm a freelance photographer in the Phoenix metro area. Today we are talking about a question I see quite a bit in the photography forums and in the comments to this channel. That question is, what is the best lens for, and then fill in the blank for whatever sport you happen to be thinking about. I want to address this a little bit differently. Instead of saying, this lens is the best sport for, say, tennis, what you ought to be thinking of is what is the best lens for the shooting conditions I'm under, the lighting conditions I'm under, the distance from the subject that I want to photograph. Those are the questions you really should be asking yourself. So with that in mind, I'm going to run through indoor sports, outdoor sports, talk about lighting conditions a little bit. I'm going to tell you what I like to use and what are pretty much the industry standards for those types of sports, indoor and outdoor sports. First, let's start with indoor sports. Now, I've talked about this lens in a previous video, and I'm going to repeat what I said in that particular video over there. This is a 70-200 f2.8 lens, and I will tell you, of all the lenses out there, if you're going to get into sports photography, this is a lens you really want to start with. And I say that because it is so versatile when it comes to both indoor and outdoor sports for a variety of reasons. This one happens to be a Nikon model. However, all the major manufacturers make 70-200 f2.8 lenses, the original manufacturers. Also, there's companies like Tamron and Sigma that also make lenses in this range. Now, this is 70-200 and it is an aperture of f2.8. That's important. If you're shooting indoor sports, lighting conditions are usually pretty bad. If you're shooting outdoor sports at night, lighting conditions are usually pretty bad. So you really want that f2.8 lens. Now, they do make cheaper models in f4. Don't recommend it unless you really think you're going to be shooting outdoor all the time during the day. I would really recommend f2.8. You're just going to need that extra light coming through that lens in those dark lighting conditions. All right, so they have the 70-200 f2.8. The next lens I would recommend, again, on the indoor sports range is at 24-70. This, again, is just a Nikon model, mostly because I'm a Nikon guy. 24-70 gives you a nice wide angle to a moderate telephoto. This also comes in handy, for example, with sports you can get pretty close to, like basketball. You can go behind the basket, shoot, and you can get all the action underneath the basket at around 50 millimeter or so. 24-70 gives you a nice range, and you can get a much wider or a slightly more, cropped in look. So those are the first two I would say for indoor sports. Beyond that, it gets a little more specialized. You could go to the next level up from this 200 to, say, 300. That's perfectly acceptable. In fact, there's some lenses out there on the market, pretty darn expensive, that go from, say, about a 120 to 300 f2.8. You're looking at about $9,000 for those, so you have to be really committed. However, that's probably a perfect range indoor, cover just about everything you could possibly think of. But if you're on a budget and you can only really afford one lens, I suggest this 70-200 f2.8 for indoor sports. Now let's move on to outdoor sports. So for outdoor sports, my advice is a little bit differently because now we're talking about extended distances to the subject of your photography. Again, a great starting point, 70-200 f2.8 lens. A very versatile lens. Now, you're not getting as much range outdoors, and you're going to have to wait until they get much closer to you, but nevertheless, still great. If you get more advanced, now you have two camera bodies, for example. This always goes on one of my camera bodies for those closer in shots when they get up close. Now, what happens if they're farther away? Well, now we start talking about those longer distances, those bigger lenses, and it starts to get a lot more expensive. Here's what I'm thinking. You really need to go on the field, say soccer, American football, rugby, baseball, softball, things like that. You're looking at 300 and above. Again, you're still looking at about an f2.8 lens, if at all possible, for night photography. If all you're going to do is photograph field sports during the day, you have a lot more options that cost a lot less money. So if you're a Nikon photographer, I have a 200 to 500 f5.6. This lens is about, I don't know, $1,400 brand new, and you get them half that price used. Now, Nikon cameras only. However, there are some other manufacturers out there who are doing lenses similar to this one in a similar range that cost significantly less than if you were to buy the original manufacturer's lenses. For example, Tamron makes a 150 to 600 f6.3 lens, and those run about $1,400. So not bad. Sigma also makes a 150 to 600 f6.3 for less than $1,000. Now, if you really want to stick with the major manufacturers, Canon makes a 70 to 500 7.1. Canon also makes a 100 to 400 f8, which costs a lot less than, you know, their big prime lenses. Or Sony also makes lenses in these ranges, you know, but you're looking around $2,000, $2,500 for those. Now, if you're really, really serious about your sports photography, or you're just ready to move to that next level, now we're talking about the big prime lenses that go to f2.8. So for field sports, it's really hard to beat a 400 f2.8. I can use this daytime, nighttime, doesn't really matter. It's great for about any field sport you can possibly imagine. Combine that with my 70 to 200 on a different camera body, and I could pretty much cover a wide swath of the field, both very near to pretty darn far away. The advantage to this lens, of course, is the f2.8, where night photography is really doable and possible. Now, some downsides to a lens this big. A, very, very expensive, but I bought this used. Number two is the bigger the lenses are, when you start to get to the higher apertures, they get to be pretty heavy. That's another downside. Some of these other zoom lenses, for example, this 200-500 is much lighter. However, you can't really use it at night. So there you have it. Pretty much everything you need to know about both indoor and outdoor photography when it comes to lenses.